Do you see how Ernie's already on? Oh Lord.
Oh, hey, I could be. I left you as host.
Okay.
Okay,
Ernie's in the waiting room
I
already.
know I see that already. Yeah,
That's good though.
it's being recorded right now. Just so you
Yeah,
know, I mean, you could stop and restart it if you want. It's just
I
that
could
when I
pause
said,
it. Okay. I'm gonna add Ernie in and I'm gonna take my camera off now. So you could start.
all right, everybody, Anthony, LI Tech. This is the ugly side of cyber threats. If you have a ugly sweater, which I do here, I have a llama on mine. I'm wearing it. Uh, please do so. Anyhow, this is basically looking at the cyber threats that are happening around the holiday times, especially, and how you should be reviewing your cyber plans. I'm also going to touch a base on some personal things you could do to protect yourself personally, but from a school standpoint or from an organization, any kind of company, really, it's about what you need to do to stay vigilant and to keep ahead of the curve on cyber attacks. This is me. I'm not wearing a fedora today, but I'm Anthony Buonaspina, basically CEO of LI Tech Advisors. I've been around a very long time, do a lot of cybersecurity protection. I've done a lot of top secret governmental work. I do know about measures and countermeasures, and it's a war out there basically against cybercrime. So basically, what is cybersecurity? Basically, it's the process of protecting data, electronic system networks against cyber attacks. Exactly what it says there. Basically, it's fortifying your network, fortifying your life, um, every kind of electronic device you have, even that are non-electronic. Sometimes you get phone calls, sometimes you get letters in the mail. It's about knowing what an attack is and recognizing it and what you need to do after an attack. Let's say try to mitigate it first. All right. And if you can't mitigate it, you have to then deal with the repercussions. But there's a process and procedures you can follow. Um, Basically, the types of attacks that are pretty much prevalent right now, especially 2023. In addition to what you see here, we also have, of course, AI added to this. But malware, what happens here is that basically you get malware such as viruses, ransomware, Trojans, antiviruses, and so on, basically from just going to sometimes websites. Something will download, you get a email, and through a phishing attempt, and so on. And what that will happen is that basically you open up something, and your systems aren't in place, let's say, to protect you against it, and it then runs rampant against your infrastructure, even your personal computers, your business computers, and so on. And the way these attackers are all about basically the same thing. They all want to, gain money. It's a big business out there, and they're looking to maximize their effect. And they will, basically hold your data for ransom. They'll encrypt it, and then you'll have to pay them to decrypt it, unless you have very good backups that are air gapped. What I mean by that is that there's a separation where they can't get to it, to encrypt it. Um, Also, they will hold your data for ransom. And, they will put it out, threaten to put it out on the web. That's why when you go through and you see what when you analyze what a cyber attack would do to your business or organization or even to you personally, you got to make sure all your personal information is not out there, because then the cyber attacker, the criminal and so on, it won't have anything to hold over you. If you have that in a special area, let's say where it's multi-factor authentication and also maybe protected with some kind of file cabinet vault or some other that is more uh, less likely to get attacked. Now, threats are such that you have insider threats. It means that you have somebody, even just a subcontractor, or somebody coming into the organization with a USB stick, let's say, and plugs it into a computer, and before you know it, you have a virus. The way to protect against that, we tend to turn the USBs off so that the little sockets that are on those computers are inactive. Somebody goes in, plugs something in, does nothing. So those are the kind of things that you look at. What is the potential of what could happen, and you try to protect and take steps towards it before it could happen. The other threats are, for example, supply lane chain attacks and so on, which that is like SolarWinds was a big thing on that. Is that if a big organization gets attacked and their updates get attacked, a hacker will actually put an update or add something to their update, and the update, now it's a trusted source, comes into your machine. Now you have that, basically Trojan virus or something on your machine. And the way you protect against that is to make sure the third-party vendors you're dealing with and so on have the right protections in place, make sure they're doing their job. There's also things called zero-day exploits. It's hard to protect against those in general, because you might have an antivirus on your machine, which is maybe doesn't have the signature for the latest virus that just came out. That's what they mean by 0 day. It happened today. A hacker just created something, sent it out. Your system did not check for that. Now, standard antivirus really can't help you much with this, because it's just based on signatures and everything it has in its database. However, if you have like an EDR solution, that's an endpoint detection and response, something that looks for abnormalities and so on in the data. If it sees it's trying to load something on or do something that's just not right, it'll stop it or mitigate it before it gets any further. That's the key here, is that you want to you may not be able to stop it, but you can stop it from going further, right? Mitigate it. You have denial of service attacks and so on. That's where a attack would happen, and it usually happens with larger organizations where a cyber criminal will send out pings and requests and everything to a server to try to just like overwhelm it. Cloud security and so on, same thing. You want to make sure you have robust security. If you have things on the cloud, make sure you have multi-factor authentication, two-factor authentication, sometimes referred to as MFA. Got to have it in place on everything in your life. Can't stress that enough. The employees are your largest security risk. Absolutely. IBM did a survey, basically 95%, and actually I think that's low, higher than 95% of breaches occur because of employees that were not trained. Automated training is the best. Periodic, in-person training, virtual training is also good, like what we're doing here right now. It's good to have that in place, just to keep employees aware that they are the number one source of breaches, and they got to be careful what they're doing. And now, just being careful, what does that mean? You have to explain to a employee what a phishing attempt is. Best way to do that is send them phishing attempts, so that they get familiar with detecting them, and also alerting the IT department of their existence and so on. And again, if an employee fails, the automated systems will put them through training, whether they like it or not. They have to do the training. Otherwise, their accounts get turned off. That's the only way we tend to do this, is when we put it up to the administrator level, where they have to basically be careful and also do the training that is put out to them. The email and so on, again, it represents a major security risk. But what happens is that ransomware or some kind of like, hey, please send me gift cards stuck in Mexico. I need gift cards. You got to be careful. You got to read these things and and so on. But with AI now, these are getting more sophisticated, where they look pretty good. So again, training is where it's all out, about. Okay. Now, as far as like, things that you need to do, being proactive is the way to go. As far as trying to think ahead and making sure you have the safeguards in place, and so on. Being going through and like if you're getting cyber insurance, for example, this is one of the best ways. If you're getting cyber insurance, they usually the companies will put you through the paces of what you need to have in place, and you do what they call gap analysis to say, okay, this is what the cyber insurance is recommending. This is what I have. Let me fill in the gaps. Every cyber insurance company requests or requires multi-factor authentication at a minimum, but they also require a lot more these days, and those forms are getting much more thicker than the one-page 5 questions that they used to be. Anyway, the whole thing is about anticipating a security breach, actually going through and pretending you had a breach. What would you do? What's your first phone call? Okay, most people don't even know who they should be calling. And actually, the first phone call should be to your attorney from an organizational standpoint, because then you under attorney-client privilege. At that point, you bring the cyber insurance company in, and of course, your MSP would be there to work together. Again, for as far as building a good cybersecurity foundation, you want to do risk assessment, all right? Making sure you have all your policies and procedures in place. It's important for especially a nonprofit organization that's public and so on, have it posted on your website, all your policies and procedures, and you regularly go through it on an annual basis to review them. Sometimes it's good to have a third party come in and review them, a cybersecurity audit, which I'll go through that in a bit, what that entails. Also very important is looking at access control. There are many ways to do this, but if you have like Active Directory, if you have Google, Google admin, Microsoft accounts and so on, you got to look at who has access to what, all right, and making sure that you limit the access, all right. So you want to do least privilege, meaning if somebody doesn't really need to have access to something, they shouldn't then turn it off. And make sure you always have MFA as your line of security against getting into those sensitive areas. You may have many levels of security in that case. There's a few things you could do to bolster that. Monitoring response, making sure you have an instant response plan in place. All right, if this happens, what do you do? What's your first phone call? Making sure that data at rest is encrypted where possible. There's requirements in some cases you encrypt it or encrypt it in transit. So you got to make sure that you're adhering to whatever policies you have in place for your organization. Accountants have them. They have WISC. They have certain requirements they need to deal with. There's HIPAA laws and everything for health and so on. There's things you need to make sure you're adhering to, and that's where the gap analysis help you to make sure you're in place. You have things in place. Network and endpoint security, meaning firewalls. You got to make sure you don't have just something you picked up at Best Buy. You need a business level security appliance that does intrusion detection, prevention, that has some smarts to it that can stop a problem before it even gets into your organization. Also, make sure they're always up to date, and so on. And you want to make sure you're monitoring your endpoints. An endpoint is a PC, all right, basically a server. It's best to have, like with a server or an endpoint, we tend to roll out also what they call 24/7 monitoring using a SOC. It's basically a security operations center, which can be manned by upwards of 200 people, which then react and so on will detect something, react, even on a Friday night or on Christmas Eve, they will react. Regularly back up your data. This is so important. We can replace everything except data. All right, so it's important to back it up and make sure it is air gapped. Sometimes I recommend dual backups, backups using 2 different independent software. Like even Microsoft and Google, if you have a Microsoft account or a Google account using Google Drive, OneDrive, and so on, you got to make sure you're backing that up with a third party. They recommend, both Microsoft and Google, in their terms and conditions, all right, in the fine print, basically tell you that you need to back it up using a third party, because their backups are not adequate enough. So Google just recently, I had a client tell me, well, Google never lose data. It's Google. They just lost like a month to 2 months worth of data. So with some people, they're just gone. They had a server issue and it's just gone. That's why you need to have a backup on that stuff. It's very important. Continuing on here. Okay. There's also AI. AI is the thing today. Everybody's talking about it. And what does it mean? And how can we either use it for our advantage, or how do we protect against threats that come in that way? Which is, these cyber criminals are getting smarter and smarter, and they're using whatever tools are available to them. So we have to counter it with AI power driven solutions, which there are out there now as things evolve. Even Microsoft is spending billions on this to help protect its infrastructure and so on. So it's a pivotal role thing right now, in that we're still learning. All right. And as AI matures, and as we see things come out, but employee training will help against this, because these AI will use data metrics and so on to analyze, look at somebody's Facebook profile, and look at their Instagrams and so on, and see and then formulate a message to them that looks really real. So again, it's a matter of keeping ahead of this and training. Um, incident response and recovery. Second, one step ahead again. You want to look at things like even your website. All right, that's not written listed here, but website. You want to make sure you have MFA on there and limit the amount of people that have access to it. Hackers love to take over websites and put up whatever they want. So you want to make sure you have the ability of taking down your website immediately. Make sure you have the keys to that kingdom on the registrar. Make sure it's multi-factor authentication so you can jump in if you had to take it down for some reason. But also limit access to whoever has access to it. You want to make sure that the admins on it have multi-factor, and you're limiting it. Same with any vendors you're using. You sometimes have a phone vendor or even HVAC and so on that had access to your systems at one point. They needed it for their equipment and so on. You want to make sure that you're reviewing that and turning them off. Give them a temporary account that will expire in a few days to do what they need to do, and they're out of there. So that's something that needs to be regularly monitored. Now, monitor both incoming and outgoing traffic. Usually a good router, so on, a security appliance would do that. But in addition to that, we're actually introducing things like something called a SIEM now, which is basically something that looks at the holistic activity on the network, everything, all the logs and everything going on within a network environment. And it reports it, again, back to a SOC. So if it sees any kind of irregularities, it will report it and shut it down. Again, providing users with least privileged access. All right. I come from a defense contracting background. It's a lot of private stuff, and it's a need to know. If they don't have a need to know, you don't give them access. Maintain strong backups with a history. Very good to have historic backups. Periodic spin-ups are important too, because you want to make sure that you have the data, the integrity is there. So it means spin-ups mean you go check the data, make sure it's there and it's accessible and so on. The strong backups, meaning that you want to have something to the cloud that's air gapped. Basically, you can't get better than that. And that, if somebody does hack or infiltrate the lower, on-prem servers or even the cloud servers, there's a gap between that and the historical backup. Always apply software and security patches to everything, including your phones. Okay. iPhones are more resilient, but again, put those patches in. If you have an Android, you're more open to getting a virus on that. So you have to make sure, besides patching it, you got to make sure you have some kind of antivirus on that. You want to implement multi-factor authentication everywhere in your life. I also want to use, and I'll get into this a bit about using passwords on every single site should be different. And you're going to moan and groan about it, but I'll show you a way around that. You want to also train users. Again, training is very important. I'm going to keep repeating this. You also want to make sure you have some kind of security policy in place. That includes home devices, especially what COVID did with us and everything. People, a lot of working from home, hybrid, and so on. Those home devices should be company owned, something that can be managed so that you can put all the necessary software and protection on them. You don't want somebody using a home device that also their kids are using for Facebook and so on, that might have some kind of keyboard logo on it, and so on. That opens up a can of worms. Okay, clean desk policy, prevent unauthorized copying. Okay, meaning that at the end of the day, in our case, at our office, our desks are clean. There's nothing on them. All right, we just make sure everything's put away where it should be. That comes from my defense contracting background. Everything had to be locked up. Destroy old hard drives. Now, you can't just throw away hard drives or a computer. Even printers and copiers and so on can have hard drives in them. What you need to do is, there's companies that just do this. They'll come and pick up your equipment and degauss it. The best way to destroy our old hard drive is to degauss it. It used to be, the NSA used to tell us, oh, I drill through them. But you know what? That's not good enough anymore. Cyber criminals can actually take pieces of those drives and recover data. So degaussing is the way to go. And again, third party is the best way to do this. Network cybersecurity audits, third party, even your MSP shouldn't be doing these. It should be somebody else outside. This way the MSP can be checked as well. And an audit, what is an audit? Basically, it does, the normal scans and accessories, but it's a holistic thing. Somebody would come in, look from the entire workflows, your policies and procedures in place, what the website says, and compare it and do some gap analysis for you. And they work with the MSP, your IT guy, and so on to make sure things are, in order. And they will show you where they're not and where you need to fix things. PCI information is very important. Doing scans periodically of your internal infrastructure, it shows you that sometimes social security numbers are out there, ACH unencrypted information, very bad thing. So it's a matter of making sure that that information is put, first of all, not kept on somebody's desktop, but it's put at least on a server in a secured area that limited access. But even with that, you may want to even go with one step further, like an accountant does, is put it into like on a cloud file locker where it's not even on the server. This is a big business. This is why there are so many hackers out there. It's a lot of money, 10.5 trillion by 2025. It's the third largest economy in the world. This is why there's so much money in this. I just read a report that Korea they stole like $2 billion of cryptocurrency. That's billion with a B. Insane. Okay, thing now personally I'm talking about, because if you get hacked personally, it's going to affect the business, the organization, because if you're using your own computer and so on and you get hacked, you got that to deal with, and it's going to affect you personally, of course, but in a lot of cases the business as well. You're doing online transactions this holiday season, okay? Never ever use a debit card. All right, why? Debit cards offer you zero protection. Once that money's out of your account, it's gone. It's linked to your bank. Credit cards, however, offer you much more protection. You call the credit card company, they'll tell you, yeah, an issue. I think your biggest liability is like $50. They also will immediately take care of the issue. And also there's protections in place. They will monitor your account. If they see a charge go through, they're going to alert you. Debit cards don't really offer you that level of protection. So never use a debit card. Now, with credit cards, and I use this a lot, if I'm ordering from a website that I really want the item, but I don't trust the site, I'll use what they call single-use number. With a credit card, you can do that. Like I use Capital One. They have a service called ENO, which basically allows you to use and generate a unique credit card number, expiration date, and security code for that one purchase, for that one website, that one time. If that ends up being a hack, a cyber, somebody that is, stealing your information, it's useless to them. It was only good for that one transaction. Also, like one of the things too is as you're doing sometimes on the MFA, it asks you, like, you get around that, hey, what are the security questions? Hackers can actually, using social media now with AI even more so, generate the answers to those security questions. You got to be very careful in answering those questions. Like, for example, what is your first car? Well, red Corvette. Don't say that. Don't even say Corvette. You maybe use the word red. Okay. Maybe name of your first pet. I'll use one of my kids' names. It's kind of funny, and I'll always remember it. So anyhow, it's a way of just protecting yourself even further. Okay, I told you. All right, it's possible to to use a different password on every site. Now you might have dozens of websites out there. What do you do? It's important to use a different one. Why? Because Home Depot millions of accounts were stolen from Home Depot under that when they were attacked. What happens, what a hacker will do is take that information. They'll buy it online. All right, go to the dark web, grab that information, then do a library attack, meaning they'll go to Staples, Best Buy, Amazon, using the same username and password, and even the banks and so on, and then get in using your username and password that stole off Home Depot. So what do? How do you use a different password? This is how you do it, is basically use a passphrase. Create what they call a core passphrase. Like in this case, defense asterisk, which is using a $ here for the S, 2468 exclamation. Has enough of the complex characters. It's long enough. You have to commit that to memory. Okay. It could be even like two of your kids' names with some kind of numbers between it with some kind of like a $ exclamation point and so on. Once you have that memorized, you never write it down anywhere. Don't write it down. I mean, if anything, you put D ... All right, well, that's the passphrase I'm using. Now, if you go to the Staples website, you're going to use that passphrase, but prefix it with an S, end it with an S. That's Staples. Best Buy, prefix with a B, end with a Y. Amazon, A and N. It's a unique password. So if Staples ever is hacked, a hacker will take that password and think they can use it everywhere, but they won't be able to. All right. Now, as far as if you want to see if your email was actually, in a known breach, and you'd be surprised. All right. Click on that link, and I'm going to send this, deck out to everybody. But it's haveibeenpwned.com. Try it. It's amazing. Put it in there, and it'll show you all the places your email address has been found on the dark web from other hacks. The other piece of it too, the first line I had on here is about, when you choose that password, the passphrase, you want to kind of run it past like how secure is that? So there's a URL at the top here, security, how secure is my password? It'll actually show you using a brute force attempt how fast it will find that password. In this case, it might take, a million years, using a brute force. Some of them are like a few seconds. So again, keeping that in mind, this is very strong, right? You should use, unique passwords and multi-factor wherever possible. All right, phishing attempt. I always want to go back to this, even though I covered it in last month's webinar. What if it's a phishing attempt? I mean, this is something I got. It looked pretty good. This is during COVID. I'm saying, okay, this is a COVID test process. I'm like, okay, maybe one of my employees, whatever. I'm looking at it, saying, okay, this is fake. How do I know it? I'm looking at the extension of the file that was attached. It's an HTML. Right off the bat, anything that is like exe and so on, anything other than a PDF. PDF usually safe to open, but you have to look at the where you're expecting it, who's coming from, and even the thing that says this sender has been verified from a safe senders desk. That was put in by the hacker to make it look legit. The external email, that little thing in there, my system, my Exchange system, and I also roll this out to clients. Is that any email that comes from outside the organization will get flagged as an external email. So again, keeping it vigilant and making sure that, if you're not sure about opening something, don't. Okay, never add like websites. I'll go to certain websites and I'll find a lot of email addresses in there, like under the contact us in clear text, written right out there. Now, a spider going through, or a robot going through the web will easily pick them off and now use them against each other, meaning, you have the entire email address for an organization, everybody's email address now. They're going to send emails pretending they're from somebody else. And so you don't want to have that happen. You actually Google your email address, see where it's appearing, okay, and try to get rid of it from wherever it is. Websites should be using a form, contact us form, which hides everything. Okay. Like I said, Google your name and address, email address to see where it shows up. Delete old unused account information. Time to get rid of that MySpace account from 2003. I actually had one stolen. It's like I found it and got rid of it. Third-party cookies, unlimited unmarked tracking. If you actually go through it, you can actually, let me Google it. If you click that link, it'll actually show you how to do that. Also, you want to, again, have I been pawned? And how secure is your website. But the thing is, Google does a lot of tracking. And if you actually let it look at, and go through like, what does Google know about me? Google that and so on. Like, you'll see that Google knows a lot about everybody individually. They track pretty much everything you do. And I personally don't like that. Okay. This is a lifestyle. This is just something as a nice little thing. Basically, it's a live cyber map that actually shows attacks in real time, what's happening. It's all over the place. It's crazy. America is definitely under attack from outside, but basically, it just shows that this is a thing. It's a lot of money and so on. Now I'm ready for questions and so on. And there we go. Do I like 1Password? Yes, I will use 1Password. Is something on a password handler. What that is, a password handler is something where you can put all your passwords in one place, and as you go to a website, it pops it up for you. All right, that's better. Okay. Also, things like if you go have a Microsoft account, and I know this is a pain in the butt, but if it asks you like to put in like MFA, all right, multi-factor, and you bring up your, it could be a text. Best way to use is Authenticator app. It's the best source because Microsoft is actually getting away from using SMS. So basically, what happens is that you're better off, when you're doing that, it asks you if you want to store it for like 60 days, not bother you. You could do that. It's on your trusted machine, as long as your machine is secure. But if it's something where it's a very critical machine and everything, you really don't want to do that, especially if you're in a public forum on somebody else's machine. You never want it to remember it because it stores it as what they call a hash in Chrome, for example, and a hacker can definitely take advantage of that and bypass your MFA. Okay, I'm going to go through the chat right now. Okay. Yeah, how do you deal with the additional cost? That is a major problem for schools and any nonprofit. There are a lot of costs involved in maintaining this level of vigilance. The thing is that the government always is years behind this. I do see like there was a $200 million New York State grant put out. There's some federal grants that were put out. We need money from the government. That's how this has to happen. That's the only way. As far as like getting, it's almost like E-rate funds and so on. We need something like that for cybersecurity to bolster it, because this can be very expensive very quick. But what you need to do is evaluate what you really need right now to stay ahead of the game. Definitely an EDR solution, like a SentinelOne with a SOC. You want the best level of that possible. You want also to make sure that you have in place multi-factor authentication on everything. Make sure you have employee training everywhere. These are the basic things. That's, as far as, cyber attacks happening, that's where it's coming in from. Start there. As far as implementing a SIEM, that's very expensive. You may, that's something which I would do the other stuff first. Again, put that on the, boilerplate as far as doing it in the future and hoping that some money becomes available for schools and so on. And then, yeah, it seems like we're always doing more and more stuff. Yeah, I agree. As far as like additional things that, for example, the latest thing now is that, you're emailing, you have a domain name. Like we have litechadvisors.com. We do a lot of emailing from that. But internally, mainly to each other, some to clients in here and there. But whenever we do a social media campaign, we're sending out mailings or newsletters, we never use that domain. We use LITech Family. You'll see stuff come from there. Why? Because when you're sending it out, publicly like that, it tends to get tarnished. That domain will get tarnished. If somebody unsubscribes, they never signed up for it. There's many reasons that will tarnish it. That's why you want to use a separate domain for that. This way, your primary, production domain is never touched. The other piece of it too is that you want to also monitor. When you're getting into the point of doing that kind of, mailing campaigns and so on, what happens is that there's third-party countries. All right, I won't mention a few, but it's like China loves to steal our domains, and they will use the domain, which they can do, and pretend they're sending it from it. Now, what happens is that if you do, there's something called DMARC and SFP, tags, text tags, and everything you can put on your domain for the DNS and so on. So it's important to have somebody look into that and fix that for you, so that when you're sending it, it has a good reputation. Now, in order to fix the tarnished reputations, you need to make sure you do something called DMARC monitoring, and that's something where it actually will protect and monitor. If China does use it, it then anything coming from there gets immediately thrown in somebody's junk because it wasn't the efficient, the original vendors sending it. So if you're using Constant Contact or MailChimp, you can set up the SPF records to make sure that say it's okay for Constant Contact to send on my behalf, or MailChimp and so on, so that those things don't tarnish you. But when what happens when China's doing it, it tarnishes that domain. That's what I'm saying. There's a few ways around this. One is the monitoring, and also just having a separate domain name for doing social media broadcasts and so on.